All right, we had a little technical difficulties, but we are good. So happy Monday, Glowing Stones. We're excited to be here. This is Brian.
Hey guys.
So back in the beginning of September, it was actually Labor Day that we did the last one. Brian came on and did a team training about storytelling and selling through storytelling. And I've talked to a lot of you that really liked what he had to say, and I thought it was great, but I'm a little biased. So I talked to a lot of you that loved it, and Brian enjoyed it because this is like his wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, I like training stuff. Yeah.
So we decided to come again and bring you overcoming objections. So what I'm really excited about with this is that this is a little different than what we've heard before, what we've been trained on. Some of it is going to sound familiar, but some of it, to me, sounded new, and I really like it. I really think you're going to love this, actually. I'm very, very excited for it. So hopefully you can stick with us. We'll try to keep it to about 20-ish, 25 minutes. Please comment below if you're here. Say, hey Debbie, hey Emily. And if you're watching the replay, hey Bridget, say you're watching the replay so we know who's catching it. This will be kind of interactive in some parts, so get ready to...
Excuse me.
You're so loud. Oh my God. So, hey April. So you get ready to type because we want to hear from you and what you think and what you need help with. So overcoming objections, I'm going to really not talk. Well, I probably will, but I'm going to...
We all know that's not true.
I'm going to try to be quiet for a lot of this and just let Brian take the wheel. So just real quick, for those of you that don't know, Brian is my husband, and he has been in sales since 2005, so 14 years, medical sales, medical device sales, and now biotech sales. And he loves podcasts, and we both do. It's podcasts about selling and business, and same with books. So he brings a lot of experience to the table for all of us. And while he sells something to transplant doctors, and we sell accessories to any woman. There are a lot of commonalities. So
yes, absolutely. So everything, there's some basics that overlap all over the place. So
and he sold himself to you. That was the line of the last thing.
I did some. That took a long time. We'll talk about that someday. We'll cup of drink someday. But so last time we talked about utilizing a story to help you sell something, because sometimes it can be intimidating to try to sell something outright to somebody. And if you can develop a story and tell them your story, sometimes that makes life a little bit easier, and it makes it a smoother transition. You feel more comfortable and confident, right? Well, same thing with this today, overcoming objections. This is about being confident and being sure of yourself and having a conversation about all those same things. They apply to this as well. And I'm going to give you a quick short, once over on how I feel the three main points for overcoming an objection. I'll say before we even get into that, the number one thing about overcoming an objection is having the right mindset going into the objection, right? You should, and I tell this to every single person I've ever worked with, you should 100% be hearing no in your job. It is a part of the job. If you're not hearing no, you're probably not reaching out enough and probably not putting yourself out there enough. It is, without a doubt, you're going to hear it, if not daily, certainly weekly, right? So
all the time.
I'm sure that's a part of it, right? Don't take it personally. It's nothing about you. That's how life works. It happens, right?
And Brian, he travels quite a bit, so he will drive.
So I cover 7 states, right? So I'll get on a plane, I'll drive a car, I'll travel 4 or 5 hours for one individual meeting, and it's not uncommon for them to say, okay, great, no. So how you handle that is everything, right? So you should always expect to hear it. The other thing about your mindset going into objection handling is don't think of this as an argument you're trying to win. You're not trying to score points. You're not trying to convince anybody else that you're correct. Think of it in terms of you're trying to build an ally, right? So when someone tells you no, resist the urge to immediately explain to them why, well, you're wrong, I'm right, and that's just how it's going to be, and I'm going to tell you all the reasons why I'm right? Resist that, and think of it in terms of you're trying to build an ally to help you long term, because that's going to be putting you more along sort of the right mindset, I think, right? I think if you watch a political debate on TV, that's exactly what you do not want to do when someone says no and someone puts up an objection, right? Don't immediately launch into a laundry list of reasons why you're correct and why they don't know what they're talking about, and let me help you understand. Resist the urge to do that. It's natural. It's going to happen to everybody.
Don't be me in our arguments.
I don't even know what that means.
I may be guilty of that.
But yes,
now this is where this is all coming from.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
So think of someone giving you an objection and saying no. Right. Number one, expect that they're going to say no. Number two, look at that as an opportunity for a conversation to build an ally. Right. Which leads us right to my 3 keys for objection handling.
And if somebody wants to type these down below, that'd be amazing, like the bullet points.
Yeah. Right. So key number 1 to objection handling: acknowledge the objection. Right. So. And I'm going to tie this all back to my favorite. I don't know, you guys are familiar with feel, felt, found. I'm sure you've heard that.
We train on that.
Yep. On that. Mm-hmm. It's like maybe the oldest sales thing in the history of sales training, mm-hmm. right? But it is because it works. It's tried and true. It makes people feel like they're not alone. Feel, felt, found. I try to weave that into what I'm doing, and I break that down into 3 things. First of all, acknowledge the objection, right? You want somebody. People want to be heard. We want to be heard. Your clients want to be heard. Your kids want to be heard. Everybody wants to be heard and acknowledged. I think that's, without a doubt, the number 1 thing you want to do, right? So think of this, I always say, like, use analogies and think, if I'm going to buy a car and I walk onto the used car lot and I'm looking around, somebody comes out and says, hey, what can I help you with? And I say, I'm married, I've got 3 kids, I'm looking for a bigger vehicle, absolutely not going to spend more than $40,000 or whatever that number is, right? And the first thing he shows me is a $48,000 car. And he goes, oh, well, look, it's got heated and cooled seats. He didn't hear at all what I just said, right? He's not paying attention to me as the client, and immediately I'm building a wall, and I'm like, I'm done with this guy. This is a poor, sales experience for me. I no longer like this. I'll go find somebody else, right? Well, when someone says something, I don't want to do X because of Y, the first thing a professional salesperson should do is acknowledge why, right? And sometimes it's hard, right? Because people will say, I don't want to do that because, or, I'm too busy, or whatever it is, right? And I'm going to give you some homework at the end of this too, but what I like to tell people is, this is a great place to ask questions, right? Someone will say, you're offering a stylist opportunity to a woman and she says, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time for that, right? Again, resist the urge to immediately launch into, yes, you do, you can do X, you can do Y, you can do Z, you can do this, you can do that.
Which I think this you guys is key right here.
Right.
Because this is what I haven't been trained on. This is what we haven't been trained on, I don't think. And we a lot of times do that. I know how you feel, but what I found is da-da-da-da. Yeah. This asking the question, this is gold, so
right.
Pay attention.
So number 1, it involves the client in the solution, right? So they're a little bit more married to then making that work, right? It's not you telling them what they need. It's a simple question. Hey, I just don't have time to be a stylist. I love what you guys do, but I just don't have time for it, right? What do you think takes so long? Or how long do you think I spend in an average day working my side hustle, or this is a full-time, whatever it is, right? Or how long do you imagine it takes, or what exactly do you think will take the most of your time, or what would be an amount of time you'd be willing to spend on a weekly basis on this, right? Because you're going to want to really dial down to what that true objection is. Again, resist the urge to immediately launch out and say, yes, you do, absolutely, I know how you feel, I felt the same way, here's what I found. Try not to do that, because it sounds canned, it sounds like you're a robot, it sounds like you're repeating something that you said to the last 50 people you tried to get to sign up for the stylist opportunity, and clients feel that too, they can understand that. So acknowledge the objection, dig a little deeper, ask a few questions. What do you think about this stylist opportunity? I think you'd be great at this. I know we've talked about this for a long time. How do you feel about it?
I'm just like not into the whole direct sales thing. I don't want to do direct sales.
You don't want to do direct sales? What is it specifically? Did you try something out before? Did you have a bad experience?
Yeah, well, I've been to parties and people are just pushy. It's just not for me. Yeah.
How long has it been since you've been to?
I don't know. It was probably like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think, I've kind of felt the same way as you when I got started here, and I can tell you things are different. It's one of the reasons why I love it here so much. Would it be a little bit more in your comfort zone? I mean, you've seen me, you know how I interact with my team and how I interact with my customers. Is that a little bit more along the lines of what you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be the girl that everybody looks at as like the jewelry lady.
Yeah, I totally understand. I felt the same way. I talked to my husband for days and weeks talking about exactly how I didn't want to do that, and I did. We had lots of conversations.
Lots of things out on this.
So I totally understand how you feel. I had those same conversations with my husband. I didn't want to be that person who showed up and nobody wanted to invite me over for kids' birthday parties anymore because they thought I was going to be pushy and shoving everything on them. And I can tell you what I found is that this business is not like that at all. It just isn't. And I don't run my business like that, and I refuse to be that person. If I could show you a little bit more about how I work that, would it make sense for you? Would you be willing to kind of sit down and at least discuss that in more detail?
Yeah, I'm open to it.
Yeah, so that's easy, right? So all we did was have a conversation and a discussion, right? So somebody say, I don't want to do direct sales, right? Well, resist the urge to immediately tell them why. This is not your mother's direct sales company, right? Ask them, what is it exactly about it? And kind of drill down a little bit, because it's really hard to solve a big math problem with 30 equations, right? But x plus y, x plus 3 equals 6 is pretty easy, right? We can all do that, right? So narrow it down, find the one variable, kind of ask a couple questions and figure it out. I think that's rule number one for handling an objection. Acknowledge that there's an objection, ask a couple questions, become personal, figure out exactly what the objection is.
I think that's so good because there's these objections we're getting, there's still big umbrellas, right? One objection, like I'm too busy, that's a big umbrella. That could mean that they think they need 20 hours a week to spend on this, or that could mean they don't understand that they can work, from their phone from the sidelines on the soccer field. Like, you have to figure out why do they think they're too busy? So that question, you guys, that's gold. That's key. We gotta really weave that in.
Plus, again, it makes you feel like a human, right? A person who's legitimately concerned about someone else's concerns. It's not you're not just rubber stamping something because that's what somebody told you to do, or you read in a book or watched on a TV show or a podcast or whatever it is, right? So ask questions, and when you ask questions, again, it's amazing. And I promise you this because this happens to me every single week in my sales life. When you start asking people questions, they start kind of really going through, and you can see them thinking it through. And I bet you a couple times a month it happens where my clients will talk themselves into doing something where they immediately said no, and they'll kind of back it down and go, well, maybe in this instance it might make sense. And just let people go a little bit, ask more questions, listen to what they're saying, really, really drill down on what the main objection is, because, again, we eliminate all the other variables and we can all solve a one variable equation. It's not that difficult, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it is about, we tend to want the words to say, and we tend to want the well, when this happens, this is what I say. And I always struggle with that as a leader. Like, I want to give the support, but so much of this is not about a copy paste, It's not. It's about relationships and building them, and that question helps you. Like, just pretend you're talking to your girlfriend and giving her advice. We've all done that. We've all been in a situation with a child or a friend or a mother or a sister or somebody in our life that needs advice. That's what you are. You're an advice giver, and you don't want to bring somebody on board this is not right for. That's the other thing, you guys. It's not about winning people for the sales opportunity. It's finding the right people to partner with. And by you asking the question, you might realize this is not right for you. Right. Yeah, like, you know what? I would love to work with you, but I don't think it is the right time for you. Why don't we? And then you can talk about how to back it down from there. But, you're finding people to partner with. You're finding the right people to partner with. You are not just looking for a million yeses, because you will build a business on a house. You'll be built, what is it, a house of cards? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not so good with things like that. But
really,
analogies are not my strong point. But you want to build on a strong foundation. So you want to partner with people that want to be here and want to work the business. So
Yep. So totally, ask questions, dial down. It makes it personal, and you can tailor your message, right? Because I think as salespeople, we get so good at selling and what we're talking about that we sometimes forget that there's a couple steps before we can really launch into that tirade. And they used to, in our business, they call it show up and throw up, right? When you show up to a client,
I never heard that. That's good.
That's a good one. You just spit out all the great information that you have and all the stuff you've trained on, and they go, what the heck? I don't even know what you're talking about, right? So you got to get to that point. So don't show up and throw up. Number 2, tell a story, right? So again, it goes back to what we talked about before. As you're going through your feel, felt, found, right? It's tailor-made to tell a story. So I don't want to do this because, I'm not into direct sales. It's not my thing. Well, what exactly is it about direct sales that you don't like? Well, I don't like being pushy. I don't want to be the one who doesn't, who nobody wants to invite to things. Well, do you think I'm pushy? I mean, I'm in direct sales, and I asked you and I offered you the opportunity. I mean, I made it, an absolute commandment of mine not to be that way when I started this business, and I'll tell you why, and then tell a personal story, right? It's short, 60 seconds, 90 seconds max. It's a short personal story that relates exactly to the objection that you're handling. And again, like we talked about last time, you wrap it up with a nice bow on the end, and there's a clear victor, right? This is the kind of story that you'd tell your kid, right? Conflict, resolution, champion. Very, very simple. Don't make it too long. Don't make it too complicated. But make sure at the end of your story, you're going somewhere with it, right? Hey, that's what I thought. I felt the exact same way. I totally get it. I didn't want to be that, and I made a point not to, and here's how I did it.
And look at me now.
Exactly. This is what I have, and
this.
I couldn't imagine my life without this in it, and this has been so valuable to me as a person, professionally, and personally to my family. So pretty simple, pretty easy. It doesn't take a whole lot. It's just a personal touch, and again, you're connecting with the client again. So that's number 2, right? Number 1.
And if you don't relate, because sometimes you don't relate. Like when I started this, I didn't have another full-time job.
Yep.
So when people tell me, well, how do I fit this in with kids in full-time?
That's my homework.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. You're the boss.
Right. That's right. Don't forget it.
No, go ahead.
No, but you want to know somebody else's stories. So you want to create, and I've trained on this with you guys before. You want to create a library of stories from other people on our team. Pay attention when I'm doing a video and I'm giving somebody a shout out. Pay attention to me saying Debbie Dawson has a high-powered full-time job and is PTA president and has 3 kids on 3 different sports teams, and her husband coaches all of them, and she still makes this business work. Now Debbie Dawson's in your library. There's a woman on my team, and she's PTA president. You don't need to know it a lot, and she does X, Y, and Z. And the way she works it is she does it during her downtime. She wakes up a little bit early in the morning, a little bit earlier than normal, and sends some messages out. She finds the pockets of time when her kids are playing, Debbie Dawson, hashtag, when her kids are at their practices, and she doesn't need to be eyeball to eyeball with them while she's sitting in the car. She can go send some messages out. Create the library of stories.
Yeah, I was going to use Debbie as an example too, because
you were.
I've heard Chris talk about her a lot, and I would say again, if you're talking with someone and you're telling a story to someone, and you've asked them, let's say 5-6 times about the stylist opportunity, and they keep going, no, and they say, I'm too busy, right? Come back and say, look, and if you want to really tailor that message, look, I have someone who had been a customer of mine for years, and I always thought she would be amazing at this, and she was a busy person. She's like the director of HR for the East Coast of America, I think, or something. I mean, she's got a lot going on,
That's
right?
her official title.
But then, again, tailor it in and say, look, she saw so much value in this community of women, and so much value in what we were doing as, female entrepreneurs and all this kind of stuff about empowering women, that she felt so strongly she wanted to be a part of it. And she thought to start off, hey, if I can donate 2 or 3 hours of my time on an average week, it's worth my time for professional development, personal development, whatever it is. And that's your tailored, customized story. Plug and play, stick it in, and move on, right? So I think that's number 1. Again, ask questions, really dial it down, make it conversational, identify exactly what that objection is and acknowledge it. Number 2, have a customized story in your back pocket to place in there for a 60-second quick spiel. And then number 3 is have a backup plan, right? And this one drives me nuts because people in my industry do it all the time. They don't have a sales plan, a sales call plan going into a sales call, right? And all I mean, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I know that you can find them online. They're 2-3 pages long. That's ridiculous to me. I don't want to spend any time doing all that kind of stuff, right? Number 1, what's the absolute number 1 thing you want to achieve by this conversation? Sign somebody up to be a stylist, expand your team, whatever it is, right? What's the number 2 thing that you'll accept to move the call forward, right? If she says, absolutely not, I can't do it, or there's an absolute, hey, I don't have time for it, and you kind of drill down a little bit, and you find out, she just had a family member get really sick, whatever it is, maybe it absolutely is an absolutely horrible time for her to do this, right? Well, then have a plan B. Hey, look, I hear what you're saying, I totally get it, and I can't imagine, you got a lot on your plate. Maybe a ladies' night might be one of the greatest things you can have right now. What if we just had a few of us get together, have a couple of drinks? I know you love this stuff. I'd love to get you some stuff for free and put a smile on your face when you got so much going on and you're completely stressed out right now, right? Have a plan B, have something to fall back on, but know what that is before you go in, right? So if you're thinking, number 1 is I want this woman to sign up to be a stylist, great. If it doesn't, and it hits the fan, you know what I'm saying, right? Have a plan B that you know you can go to immediately, right? So that's it. Number one, ask questions, drill down acknowledge that exact objection. Number two, have a story that fits that model. And number three, have a backup plan just in case you just get stuck somewhere, right? And then the last thing I'll say is part of that backup plan, I truly believe this, and this is what I learned from when I first got in this industry, you never leave a lead cold, right? Never ever walk out of there and just go, okay, I'll move on, I'll find something else. Never leave them cold, right? Always say, look, you know, about that example, right? Somebody in my family got sick, I'm having to take care of this person, it's been so much, I just can't do it right now. Never walk away from that without saying, you know what, I feel for you, I totally understand, it's a lot on your plate. Maybe a girls' night would be great, let's see if we can find something for that. If not, I'm still always going to be convinced that you would be fantastic here, and I think, and I truly believe in my heart that someday there will be a time for you to fit this into your life, and maybe it's 6 months from now, maybe it's a year from now, whatever it is, but I just want you to know I'm going to reach out, and I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to leave you out of everything here. If there's anything I can do for you in the meantime, please reach out, but I'll certainly be in touch again, and hopefully we can make this work in the future. So I believe in never, ever leaving a lead cold, because regardless of what you think, and you can say there's, you know, 100 million American women, whatever that number is, like, there's still a finite amount of customers when you drill down and drill down and drill down, right? So never want to leave anybody cold.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, so, and I think with the backup plan, we talk about we sometimes call that the order of offer. Grace talks about that a little bit on Friday. I always believe you start with the stylist opportunity. 9 times out of 10 do start with the stylist opportunity with people. A lot of times, it's not right. So then you're going to back down, like, you know what? Let's just do a girls' night then. Yep. Keep it simple. Like,
I mean, that's an easy one to pitch,
and
right?
especially for people that, for one of the objections, I don't do direct sales, like, book them. Because once they see what this is, they're probably going to change their mind. So, you know, let's just do a girls' night. If maybe you're starting with the booking and you're like, you know, I'd love to come do a girls' night with you, yada, yada, yada. And then somebody's like, I just literally, like, you've gone back and forth. I just cannot make this work. Like, all right, listen, no worries. Like, I can help you with just, like, creating a look. Like, I can send you some links of pieces that are a link of pieces I think you like. And if you want to just shop online, that's great too. You know, I'd love to be your personal stylist. And if you have a friend that is up for a girls' night, like, it would still be a great excuse. You can come to that. I'd love to see you. Yep. And I would be happy to reward you for a referral. So find a way to make a graceful exit. You know, you say don't leave a lead cold. Like, I say, don't leave, you know, graceful exit. Yeah. But it is true. Like, don't leave a lead cold, because you want people to be warm, so that you can go back to them and check in. There's
continuity when you go back to them, even if it is 6 months from now. You pick up where you left off. You're not reinventing the wheel, and that's what I mean when I say don't leave a lead cold, right? Let them know. Plant the seed so they expect you're not going to leave them alone for the rest of your life, right? You do plan at some point in the indefinite future circling back with them.
And it's not weird, you know. You want to make people feel better than you did when you started the conversation. So, like, you want to take any weirdness out of it. So when you're, like, in the grocery store, the person isn't, like, ducking down and trying to avoid you. Like, you want to be like, hey, how are you? You know, like, you don't want any weirdness. If you have any questions, drop them below. But I had a question that I thought might be good to be answered. How do you know when it's an objection to try to work through, or it's just a flat no?
Yeah, that's the whole question part, right? So again, if somebody, all right, so I'll give you this. I spend 99% of my sales conversations are face-to-face, right? I do very little trying to move business via text or email. To me, text and email are sales maintenance type calls, right? Everything's good or okay, any questions about a particular thing, whatever, right? If I'm really trying to move business, I schedule time to do it face-to-face. And I understand that model and your all model, they don't
yeah, I mean, we have great value to person. Like, that's why at your trunk shows,
right.
There's great
perfect,
value
right?
to that.
And that's what I was getting at. So if someone's going to give me a no and it's face-to-face and I'm reading their body language and they're like, dude, no, like, beat it, right? Then, you know, maybe I'm going to immediately move and shift gears, and a lot of that is I'm reading how they're, you know, responding to it. But I think most people will say, even if it's a hard no, I feel like if I say, hey, what do you think about this? And you said no, and I said no, like, do you know, have you really thought about it, or what is it that's holding you up? And I think if you ask that first question, you leave it really, really vague. Again, we've all heard this. Try to avoid the yes, no questions. Like, you know, hey, no, like, is there, you know, what is it about it really that doesn't seem to be, appealing to you, or it doesn't seem that's holding you back from taking this jump, and you're just like, because there's 99% of the time people are always going to answer that with, well, I'm just not a salesperson. I don't want to do direct sales. I don't have time. I don't have enough friends I just moved here 3-4 months ago. I don't have enough friends to build a business, right? So if you ask the right question and you make it personal, they'll give you something to take from there. I promise. And if they don't, and they just give you a hard no, that's why you have a list of 40 people that you're always contacting. I mean, I'm not going to, waste 2 days trying to beat somebody down who's just like one word answer, no. You know?
And sometimes a no is a no. And
Yeah.
they're not interested and they don't
Totally.
engage. And so don't waste your time on it.
Yeah. But I would say the vast majority of my clients who say no in the beginning, and my immediate question is, what is it exactly about this that doesn't seem to be appealing to you? Or, could you put your finger and help me understand where you got to that? Or have you really thought about it in depth? Almost all of them will say, well, really what it is X. And then there's your jumping off point, And maybe ask 1 or 2 more questions about X, tell them your story about X, and then, close with something to move business forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just do like quick few minutes of like practicing this.
Yeah.
So you guys are going to type in your answers. So some of the objections, this is like precariously placed my phone here. See if I can get some of the objections that you guys wrote. But I remember one was a booking objective, saying my house is too small. So if you reach out to somebody to book and somebody says, my house is too small, what is a question that you could ask, right? What could you say to them? It's a little bit of like a delay on this, so let me give you a minute to type. All right, here they are. What could you say when somebody says, oh, I would, but my house isn't big enough? What would be a question you could ask? Do. Have you ever fit? Boom!
So go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Good.
So again, great. Have you ever fit 4 people in your house, or 6 people, or 10 people? Like, those are very great direct questions. And April, I don't know you, but I'm a direct guy, and I love direct questions. Foga, that's Grace. Oh, that's Grace.
Grace,
I'm
Grace.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I know you, but I forgot the thing. So how much space do you think we need? I love that because it fosters a conversation, and it's not able to be answered with a simple sure or yeah or I don't know. Like, how much space do you think we need? Well, I don't know. I mean, I've never hosted a show before. You tell me. You do this every day. How much space do we need?
Right.
Well, you don't need all that much. Like, what in your mind, what does a trunk show look like?
Yeah.
So you say that to your customers. Well, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm supposed to have a dinner table full of food and 8 people sitting around. Like,
yeah, because some people haven't been to any Stella and Dot, or maybe they went to one and their friends went all out, with a crazy spread, and that's not what it's supposed to look like. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, carries together. That's a good one too. Because that's a great way to tie it back in, right? The smaller spaces are my favorite. They're intimate and fun. Like, how much space do you really think we need? Or what does it look like in your head? And as they talk themselves through it, you say, you know what? I totally understand how you're feeling. I just did a trunk show 2-3 weeks ago with this woman, and they had, a small 2-bedroom condo in the middle of the city, and she was concerned about the same thing. And I'll tell you, the small space ended up being amazing. It was intimate. We had a great conversation. The people loved it. That's a great, plug and play with your story, right? You have that in your back pocket whenever you need it. But that's a great way to put that. I love that. I think those types of questions, right? Well, how much space do you think we need, or how many people, or what are you envisioning this looking like?
Yeah, I think that's a question to put in your back pocket. Like, well, what do you think this would look like? Like, what are you imagining when I say style session? Because you don't know, and probably they're imagining what we know it to be. Mm-hmm. Here's another one. So what question would you ask when somebody says, oh, does anybody even do these kind of parties anymore? What question would you ask? Does anybody show up at in-home parties? There's that one, and then the other one we can do is, it kind of comes to the same thing. My friends never come to these kind of parties, so it's basically the same thing. So what would you ask with like, do people still go to these things, or like, oh, my friends don't shop at those things. My friends don't show up for those. What question would you ask? And then we can do one more.
Do people still do these? Is that the first one?
Yeah, or just, I mean, they're kind of together. Like, do people still shop at in-home parties, or like, oh, my friends don't shop at those?
So when someone asks you a question, it's really hard to ask a question right back, right? Like, it's hard to, it doesn't make a lot of sense to ask a direct question. So what's the last one you've been to? Great question, right? Do people still do these types of things? I would just turn it into, I said to Krista today, I'd laugh, I'm like, I mean, I can buy anything I need from Amazon. Do I still go to the store for stuff? Of course I do, you know? Or I tell folks in my business all the time, like, I mean, there's pretty much anything I can, if I work on my car, I can get windshield wiper blades at Target for sure. But if I really want to replace a spark plug or something super specific, I'm going to go to AutoZone, right? So this is, you know, the reason we do this, and you know, and then you launch into the whole, like, this isn't your mother's Tupperware show, or I don't know, my mom. Is that a thing? That was a thing.
That was a thing a few years ago. This isn't your mother's Tupperware
right,
party.
This isn't what it used to be, right? Like, this is personalized, this is, you know, customer service, like, those are what you have to sell, right? And I think if someone said to you, do people still go to these types of things, I think it's easy to say, well, hey, I can get anything I need at Amazon, but I still go to the store, do you? And then they'll, you know, maybe, you know, they go, oh yeah, you know, of course, right? And like, well, listen, what in your mind does this look like? Because again, you're going back to that question about my house is too small or whatever, right? Well, in your mind, what does this look like? Or when was the last time you've been to one of these? Or, you know, when you're having a purchasing experience, regardless of what it's for, you know, how much does it mean to you to have like that personal touch and that personalized fashion, like Carrie just said, right? Like, that's what you want to get to. You want to sell yourself as being a little bit different because you're more of an expert, and it's not a one-size-fits-all type of opportunity or event, right?
Right. Or I think too, like, you remember, and I don't think we even said this, but an objection is an invitation to conversation.
Right, yeah.
That's what an objection is. It actually is good when you get an objection, because you're like, okay, now here we go. We can do some back and forth, and it is way easier in person than it is, or on the phone than it is, you know, via messenger or texting. But you can still do it. I do it all the time. You want your message, like, and when you're messaging somebody, you want your messages to be short and sweet. Do you ever get in a text conversation with somebody, like a friend, where like they start writing you back, like, you know, they'll be like, I don't know, send. What do you think? Send. Yeah. That, I'm like, oh, we're like chatting now. It's almost like there's like two types of texting. Texting where you're like, you know, writing a few sentences, or the texting where you're like going back and forth in real time. That's the goal with this. You want to be going back and forth in real time. Like, remember AIM, Instant Messenger?
Yeah.
That's where
that
is where our love started.
That's why I had to ask her 47 times to be my AOL friend.
We used to do that in college. Yeah. Remember that? That's so funny.
Because I wasn't allowed to have a phone, but that's a different story for another day.
Yeah, that's
but yeah,
military
I think,
but yeah, you want to do the back and forth. So an objection, you rather objection versus silence, and you want, and things you could say is like, oh, why do you think that? You know, like, it doesn't even need to, you don't need to be wordy. It doesn't need to be the right words. Like, oh, really? Do you really think that? Like, you know what I mean?
Or again,
away messages. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. What do you, you know, in your mind, what does this look like? I mean, I think, you know, and that's part of the homework I leave you get. Like, there are maybe 4 or 5 questions that will work for almost any objection you get, right? And it's just a basic, open-ended, simple question that gets the wheels turning in your customer's mind, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with this, and again, for me, confidence is, I tell my kids, confidence is the key to life, right? And it really is. And if you are confident.
My kids too.
Our kids, we own them together. I mean, I don't know if I recommend it to all you guys, but it worked out okay for us.
The jury is still out.
Right. We'll let you know in a few years. Confidence is the key to life, and especially if you're going to be a professional salesperson, right? You've got to say what you mean and say it with confidence and make people believe in you, and not in a cheesy sort of used car buying kind of way. If anybody's married to a used car person or you sold cars, I feel really bad because I don't mean I just.
You all know the guy. There is amazing. We've had some amazing
We've had
service
great buying
cars. but you all know the guy that we're talking about. You
Right.
can call him the car guy or the electronics. I always think of
Mattress.
40-year-old version,
40-year-old
mattress guy.
Matches,
Yeah, like all those guys that are just like you walk in and they're like,
Yeah.
you know
Right,
what I'm
the guy
talking
who's
about.
like, you spend a third of your life in bed. Like, no, I don't, dude. You get out, right? But anyway, so be confident about it.
Now
And
we're offending all the mattresses.
right, I'm nailing everybody. So the way to be confident about stuff is to practice and to rehearse what you're about to say, right? It's really difficult to show up having never done anything once before in your life and be confident about that event. So for homework, right, what I would say is think up 2 or 3 questions, and again, they could apply to almost any objection you're going to see. Think up 2 or 3 good open-ended questions that you would ask in response to an objection, and use it for whatever objection you hear most often. If you get 10 objections in a week, and 6 of them are, I just don't have time for that, focus in on I don't have time for that, because you're going to have the biggest bang for your buck on that individual event, right? So think about 2 questions you can immediately ask when someone says, I don't have time for that, right? Think about 1 or 2 stories you can immediately apply to that situation, right? And then write down on a simple piece of paper, just doesn't have to be anything fancy, take 15 minutes, make some notes, just some bullet lines, 1 or 2 questions, here's the story I would tell, and in your mind just rehearse what you would think that conversation or how you would love that conversation to go, right? So put it together, make a little bit of a framework. Again, it doesn't have to be typed out, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be very fancy, but just have in your mind how you would say it. And then rehearse it to yourself once or twice a day, whether you're at the gym for 15 minutes, you're on the treadmill, just think that through and go through it in your head, because again, that's going to make you more confident for when that opportunity comes. So I tell our kids, confidence is the key to life. The other thing I tell them is, I had to take boxing class in college. It's a whole nother conversation. It wasn't fun. It wasn't great. Nobody really liked it. It's not the 1920s and bare knuckle. Nobody boxes anymore. But when we were in there in the first day of class, we all had to jab each other in the face, and the instructor in classic military school was like, did anybody die? And we were like, well, no. No one died. Debbie White, you can probably understand this as well. And he said, the worst thing about getting punched in the face is thinking about getting punched in the face. And I tell that to my kids all the time. Like, the worst thing about feeling like, oh my gosh, the anxiety of having to overcome an objection is thinking about having to do that. When you actually do it and you've practiced it out and you've written down a couple questions and you've made a little bit of a framework on the story that you would tell to combat that objection, it's not so bad. You do it and it just becomes second nature. And then you do it once or twice this week, and then by the time Thanksgiving rolls around, you'll have done it 10 times. And as soon as somebody says, no, I'm too busy, it flows, and it's a great personal conversation, and you just feel like you nailed it, and good for you.
Yeah, the only way you get better is by doing it.
Yeah.
By practicing. So, we'll be using that analogy. That analogy gets thrown out quite a bit in our house.
My kids, I'm a little nervous when my daughters tell their teachers, the worst thing about getting punched in the face is thinking about it. I'm like, I don't.
They're like, oh, my dad told me. We're going to be getting like child services knocking on our door. So let's use this thread. You just walked out of an OT appointment where I walk in thinking I'm going to die every day, but I never do.
Exactly.
Yes. And it's like, to me, this business is, I talk about it all the time, so much like exercising, working out. Like, the worst part about working out is walking in the door of the gym, or getting yourself to the point where you're walking in the door. Otherwise, once you're doing it, you're like, oh, and then you're like, feeling like my muscles are about to burst out of my shirt.
You start tearing shirts.
Somebody might have said that today after like one workout.
Like
I'm like,
Hulk or something.
he's like, we get home, he's like, look at this, my shirt is busting off of me. I'm like, well, he's mad now. I'm like, oh, okay, that's like an hour of lifting weights, and I wish I had those gains that fast. But anyway, I'm telling all your
confidence
dirty secrets.
is the key to life.
Confidence is the key to life. The worst part of getting punched in the face, thinking about getting punched in the face. And let's use this thread, swole. Yeah, that's how he was feeling. Julie Krause actually had to teach me what that was. I was like, is that a typo?
The kids know.
That's what the kids say. That's what all the kids say. Yeah, those young whippersnappers. Yeah. So anyway, all right. On this thread, let's post your 2 most common objections and the question you're going to ask when you get them. Let's just use this as your homework thread, and we'll keep this alive, and you'll be able to get inspiration from each other that way. So 20 minutes turned into 40.
Right. Yeah. And then the other thing that Chris said that I really wanted to say, like, the story doesn't have to be about you, right? She said, use the Debbie Dawson story, use the Julie Krause story. You used to say all the time, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. This isn't what I do. This isn't how I do it. And then you got into this, and you dipped your toe in the water, and then you really started to run, and you found out, you know what? You're exactly what an entrepreneur is, and you just didn't understand it yet. So
exactly.
Use that story, right? Like, you can pull and pick and choose from.
You can. I can look at every single person
Absolutely.
on this thread
And
and,
you know
tell
what their
your
story
story is.
is.
You know, Tiffany Krause, timing's not right. She closed on her house a week before she launched her business. She signed up, you know, moved the next week, launched her business in the week after that. Timing wasn't right, but she did it anyway. How long do you think yes, I have no time. Yes, perfect. Right. Grace Hughes, she's in the middle of moving right now. Her husband's in the military. She's, lives away from people that she knows. We have a lot of military spouses, Carrie and Beth and Karen, and lots of military spouses on this team. So we all have a story. Maybe we'll start another thread with your story. That could be helpful. I'll think that one through. It's going to be good. Just trust me. All right. I wish Charlie hadn't just walked out of the room. Debbie Dawson, we bow down to you. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for listening. Let's keep this thread alive with what we're doing, how we're working through it. And I would love to hear any other topics. Brian has the bug now. He's quitting his job, and he's going to be the new Glowing Stones leader.
I'm negotiating a salary right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not going well, but I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm telling stories. I'm seeing what's
all right.
working.
So any other training? We do have some other ideas. So we'll throw some ideas at you. Maybe I'll do a poll and see what you guys want to hear. So have a great Monday.
Go get 'em.
And we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.